We're at the Honor Advocate. We look to provide education, support, and empowerment for all of those with different abilities, mental and medical illnesses, and their caregivers. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Tammy Flynn, and I am the host and producer of the Honor Advocate. And I am super excited if you are here this morning joining us, or whether you are catching this on the replay. Now, as always, if you think any of the content that you are hearing today could be relevant for anyone in your network or your circle, please hit the share button and share the love with others. Well, as you guys may or may not know, we are in our March series for the Alport Syndrome Foundation. And today we have with us Maddie and Grant. They are both volunteers for the organization. So I want to welcome you both here to the show. Good morning.
Thank you so much for having us.
And it is, if you guys have been following this series, it's Alport Syndrome Awareness Month. And so this is the second in our series, and we're so excited to have here with us today. So I'm going to start out with Maddie. You haven't been here on the show before, and I would love for you to just introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about you.
Sure. So my name is Maddie. I am 22 years old, and I am from Connecticut. I have Alport syndrome, and I have been following along with the Alport Syndrome Foundation and have been a member since I was about 17 or 18 years old.
Thank you for being here. And Grant.
Hi, I'm Grant Bonebrake. I'm 18 years old. I live in San Diego, California, and I've been with Alport syndrome since I was about 12 or 13 years old, so about half my life now.
Wow. And the both of you are obviously volunteers for the organization, but we're really here today to hear about your journeys and your stories as teens and young adults. And so, Maddie, I would love for you to just kind of start this off with telling us where your journey with Alport syndrome began.
Sure. So when I was 2 years old, I was still in diapers, and my parents noticed that my urine was very dark in my diapers, which can sometimes be a symptom of an ongoing kidney problem. It's called hematuria, and that basically means that there's blood in the urine. So they took me to a specialist at Connecticut Children's Medical Center in Connecticut, and I saw a nephrologist there, and they originally diagnosed me with something called glomerulonephritis at age 2. I was seen by the nephrologist there for the next few years, and when I was 4 years old, they performed a kidney biopsy and diagnosed me officially with Alport syndrome. So from 4 years old on, I started taking medication. I took an ACE inhibitor called enalapril, which is used for the treatment of Alport syndrome currently. And what that medication does is it's a blood pressure medication. So it lowers your blood pressure and takes the strain off of your kidneys so they don't have to work as hard. So I was on that medication for all of my childhood and most of my adolescent life. And then when I was 10 years old, I with 40% hearing loss in each ear, which is considered moderate hearing loss. So
is that part of the syndrome?
It is.
Okay.
It is part of the syndrome. The Alport syndrome affects collagen strand 4. So that collagen strand is associated with the kidneys, the eyes, and the ears. So any form of abnormality with any of those 3 organs is consistent with Alport syndrome.
Okay.
So at age 10, we found out about this hearing loss, and I was fitted for hearing aids then. I was in 5th grade at this time. So I had my hearing aids and I went on through high school. And when I was a freshman in college, I was about 18, and I went through an episode of acute kidney failure. Basically what happened was I had been working out really intensely with a friend of mine, and I wasn't hydrating properly. And I was on a very high dose of this ACE inhibitor medication, and my kidneys kind of just were overwhelmed by all of it and by the lack of proper hydration. And my kidney function declined there. It was a very sudden, fast thing. And I had symptoms of that. And then we basically stopped my medication, stopped the ACE inhibitor medication, and I just drank a lot of water and kind of reset things. And we got my function pretty much back to normal, but it never was really the same after that. So I was in college. I go to Central Connecticut State University. I'm a nursing student there. So I was away at school, and for the next 2 years, my kidney function slowly started to decline. So over the course of that 2 years, my kidney function started to decline. And then when I was 20 years old, my kidney function really, hold on one sec. So when
No,
I was
fine. Because, as I'm listening to you, Maddie, I'm like, oh my gosh, she could be a doctor. You mean you have like every relation, all your words, right? I'm like, somebody wants to hire you to be their advocate. Let me tell you, you have so much knowledge. I mean, seriously, for someone of your age, I mean, obviously, that is what all advocates and young adults and teens that have chronic illnesses and syndromes that they strive for, is to be able to like articulate their words and to tell people back what's going on, why it's going on. And so you need to take your breath and take a drink. You take it.
I had to get my breath there. I've told this story so many times to so many people, so I really do have a great, I know it by heart type of thing, but it is one of those things where it's like, okay, let me go through the whole thing and then wait a second, I need to breathe. Remember to breathe. So so actually it was December of 2018. My kidney function was about 25%. My kidneys were functioning at about 25%. And my doctor sat us down and said, we might need to start looking for donors soon. We're going to talk to transplant about this. And we're just going to keep an eye on you and keep you in our kind of like, we're going to monitor you.
Monitor it. And
right. And we're just going to watch and kind of wait. It really is a waiting game. So then in January, we wanted to get all of our ducks in a row. So in January of 2019, we decided to get genetic testing just to confirm that I have Alport syndrome. And both of my parents got tested as well, because we needed a potential donor, basically. So we figured we'd get the genetic testing out of the way. Prior to this, there's no family history of Alport syndrome in my family. I'm the only one that has it. Both my parents had urinalysis done, and they had 24-hour urines done, which basically can help monitor what their kidney function is. It can detect for any hematuria or proteinuria, which indicates blood or protein in the urine, and neither one of them had that, and their kidney function was normal. My brother, he's 2 years younger than me, he was also had some urinalysis and 24-hour urines performed, and his kidney function was normal as well. So he didn't have any abnormalities either. So I was the only one with any type of kidney abnormality here. So, but we wanted to make sure. So we went ahead with the genetic testing in January of that year. And the genetic testing did confirm that I had Alport syndrome. And neither one of my parents had it, though. They had 2 different mutations. They each had a mutation that contributed to my disease, but I don't have a.
So their 2 mutations kind of equaled you having one, the main mutation.
Right. So I don't have like the cookie cutter genetic mutation that indicates Alport syndrome. Basically, what happened is my parents each have sort of a benign mutation. So basically, they don't have any form of disease because in them, their own mutations are kind of normal. They don't have any clinical significance as far as they don't contribute to any kidney function or loss or anything like that. But the combination of the two in me, because I inherited both mutations, it resulted in Alport syndrome. So, and my brother did not get genetic testing yet. We decided he wouldn't need it. He wasn't going to be screened for as a transplant donor at this time. So
is that currently right now where we're at, or did you have the transplant?
I had the transplant. So this is January of 2019. In March of 2019, I met with transplant officially, and I was screened, and we officially started screening for donors. At this point, my kidney function was probably like 20%. And then over the next 3 months, we did a lot of testing. Both my parents were screened as donors, and another woman was screened as a donor that I knew. And then there were a few other people that offered that started going through the paperwork and everything. But by the time June rolled around, I was in full-blown kidney failure, end-stage renal disease. My kidneys were functioning at 15 or 16%, and I was right on the cusp of having to go on dialysis, but I had not gone on dialysis yet. And we found out my dad was ruled out as a donor, and my mom and this other woman that I knew were both, they were both accepted as potential donors for me.
Okay.
So they were both accepted by the transplant committee, and it was just a matter of deciding which one of them we would go with. Right. So because my mom had this genetic mutation, and because her mutation was not very well researched, and we just kind of wanted to go with a non-relative. We wanted to go with the safer route of
making sure there was no connection anywhere else.
Right. Because my nephrologist didn't know that since my mom does have this mutation, if it could manifest again, if Alport syndrome could manifest in the transplanted kidney. So we decided to go with this non-relative. Her name is also Tammy, actually. And she was my high school attendance secretary, who she just heard my story. I had a blog that I would keep my family up to date with. So I had a blog, and she read my blog, and she decided that she wanted to be tested. And then she ended up being a match. And so we went with her, and I was transplanted on June 24th, 2019. And everything went well. Everything went really well. And I definitely had some hiccups after transplant. I've been really lucky as to not have any issues with rejection or anything, but I was transplanted in the summer, so I had some issues with dehydration, just because you have to drink so much water after transplant, and with it being summertime and it's very hot. So there were a few times.
What's the recovery time on that?
So I was actually only in the hospital for 3 days.
Wow.
And I had my obviously the first day, by day one post-op, I was up walking around doing laps around the nurse's station. And then by day 2, I had all of my IVs and catheters were all out. And then I was home by day 3. As far as like surgery recovery, it probably took like 2 months to just heal. After a few weeks, I was fine. But just because an abdominal incision. They want you to be really careful, and it's kind of in the pelvic region, kind of near where your leg meets it's basically where your hip is. So they just want you to be extra careful with that.
And
But
how long before they know, like, if your body is going to reject it?
so you're basically not considered out of the woods until your 1 year mark. But as soon as they put the kidney in and hook it up to the blood flow, they can kind of tell, like, if the kidney pinks up, it's, being accepted by the body. And in surgery, they inject you with immunosuppressant medication so that your immune system is suppressed so that it doesn't reject what's considered the foreign object in your body. And then I was started, as soon as I woke up and everything, I was started on oral medications, oral immunosuppressant medications. And you're started on a very high dose at first, and then over time, they taper it down. But because of how immunosuppressed you are in the beginning, you're kind of quarantined at home for like 3 to 6 months. You don't really want to.
Went from that quarantine to
into COVID. Yep.
COVID in the quarantine. So you've been home for a while.
Yeah. So I was home basically inside all summer of 2019. And then I stayed home from school in the fall and just did online classes and, saw family and stuff, but you can't go really, like, you don't want to go to the shopping mall or to the movie theater or any large public places like that. And then I went back to school in January and got an apartment. And then I was home March 13th and gave up the apartment and moved back home.
And now are you going to look to possibly going back to school in the fall, or are you going to wait till 2022?
So I am a junior in nursing school right now, and I am home. All of my classes are online right now, and I go to do in-person clinicals in the hospital. Next year, I just got an email yesterday that school is supposed to be all normal. So I'm gonna have to see how that works, because I live about an hour away from school, so commuting is not gonna be very fun. But I'll be graduating this time next year in June of 2022 or May. So yeah.
That is awesome, Maddie. Wow. If anyone's listening to that, they're like, wow, telling me. You have definitely traveled like the full circle journey.
Yes.
All the way from the start to the finish. And I thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'm going to have you mute yourself, and then I'm going to have Grant start to share his story.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I've worked with Maddie a few times, so, her story is, every time she tells it, everyone's always amazed by it. Especially since she's so positive.
Story is amazing too, Grant.
Well, I mean, especially since she's a little older than I am, but she's still so positive and so happy, and a lot. Not everyone can manage that, so it's really impressive.
Yeah.
My story is a little backwards from hers. For the most part, for as long as I've known, I've had protein and blood in my urine as well, for as long as I can remember. And I actually knew from the time I was very young that I had a kidney disease, but nothing was ever done about it. My mom, for most of her life, has known she's had a kidney disease. And she, we found out a few years ago she was misdiagnosed for about 50 or so years. So she is, since Alport's is a genetic disease, she is the one that passed it down to me. But I didn't find out I had Alport's till a little after my 12th birthday. So my first signs, since they knew I had kidney disease when I was younger, not until 12 did anything actually get done about it. And so in 5th grade, I found out through hearing loss. I had a district hearing test at my school. They give you a little button press. You're like, oh, press the button when you hear a beep. Never pushed it for like 10 minutes. Didn't hear any of the beeps. They don't really expect to find kids with hearing loss by the time you're 10 or 11. You're either born with it or you get it when you're much older. It's just not something you normally find in your average public school. So we were very concerned by that, obviously, because I'd had normal hearing for almost 11 years. no signs of anything
So,
else.
and it seemed like things were pretty normal, even though you knew you had some kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. So I lived an extremely normal life. I was very into sports. I wanted to be outside as much as I could, even though I loved reading as well. I was on a lacrosse team that I traveled the country with, playing national, international tournaments, and I absolutely loved it. But when you find out you have hearing loss, it's like, whoa, so it's not completely normal. And technology for hearing aids nowadays is amazing. And I immediately went to an audiologist to get a much more professional test to find out exactly where my decreases were and just how long I probably had hearing loss. And immediately I got set up with some hearing aids, just to some donors, just so that I could have some for the time being while they made adjustments for my own personalized ones. They even I have one hearing aid in right now, and earbud in the other, but my other hearing aid right here, it's molded perfectly for my ear so that it's really comfortable. And at this point, I don't even know they're in. Like, it's just part of me. Um, but once you have hearing loss at 11 years old, you want to find out why. So my mom did a quick search and said, you know what, we'll just try this: hearing loss and kidney disease. First thing that comes up is Alport syndrome. It's just one of those rare things. Why would the kidneys and the ears be connected? But Alport's has a wide range of effects. So we have some friends who work at the hospital, like our local hospital, and we ask them, like, hey, do you have any nephrologists you would recommend? Nephrologist is a kidney doctor. And we got recommended for one. I met with her when I was almost 12, and she, after doing a few blood tests, a 24-hour urine, she immediately recommended that I have a biopsy. So on my 12th birthday, I had a kidney biopsy right before I was going into 6th grade. And about the week before school started, of middle school, they confirmed that I had Alport syndrome. So, I kind of started off middle school like, what is going on in my life? Um, and that's definitely really confusing for a kid who wants to, just go into middle school and hope everything's normal after living the same life for so long. And, like Maddie, I started with, multiple, drugs that lower my blood pressure called ACEs and ARBs. And with someone who already has natural low blood pressure, that wasn't great for me. I went from a blood pressure of about 80 or so over 60 to about 60 over 50-ish, which is about the blood pressure of a 5-year-old, they were telling me. So for a 12-year-old kid who I was kind of tall for my age, was very active, that doesn't work for my everyday life to have a blood pressure that low. So I had to drop all sports and any activities outside of school because it was just dangerous for me at that point. I would pass out at pretty much any minimal activity. Um, so, having your life flipped upside down was not exactly the best way to start middle school. Um, and it took about almost 2 years for me to find other people with Alport syndrome. I wasn't ready to really talk about it yet. None of my friends really knew. I told some kids I had hearing loss because I loved going to the beach and stuff like that. And hearing aids aren't waterproof, or at least the ones I had weren't waterproof. So I'm not trying to have my friends push me into the pool or into the water, like, hey, you know what, don't have hearing aids anymore if they're wet. So that wouldn't be good. But I didn't want to talk about it yet. So when I went to my first Alport Syndrome family meeting, almost 8th grade, so the summer before 8th grade, that was life changing. My mom had finally brought it to me and said, hey, we feel that meeting some people who are going through the same thing you are would help a lot. And at first I was completely against it. Why would I want to talk about this? It's not going to help anything. Just let me figure it out on my own. But at 13, I don't know how to figure something like that out. It didn't work. So when I actually went to this meeting and I met people who had Alports, it was life changing. It's so much better when you can actually connect with people, and that just changed. Yeah, it's the understanding is what pushes you forward. And from that moment on, I mean, it was a weekend trip. So we went to LA, we stayed in a hotel, my whole family, my mom, my dad, my brother. And my parents, my brother could not have been more supportive. And at this point, my mom still didn't know that she had Alports. So that's the crazy part. She just knew that she had a kidney disease and had completely believed for this whole time that she had the same one, or just her own kidney disease. And after this meeting, when they were talking about how it's genetic and it gets passed down, and it's very likely that one of your parents has it, or it's just some crazy genetic mutation, I knew I wanted to spread awareness, first of all, from the moment I left that meeting. I got into the car. I told my parents, I was like, look, this is really small or a very rare, small, rare disease. I want to spread awareness, though. I want everyone to know, I want to help with the funding. I met with some of the original researchers for Alports, one of the biggest research companies for Alports at the time in LA. And it was these three people working in a small laboratory, all from different countries. So they all had heavy accents. They'd never met actual patients with Alports before. We were the first people they saw. There were 8 of us there, I think. And they had only worked with mice at this point. So when they met us, I was like, wait, I'm just meeting people with Alport's first time, and you're just meeting people with Alport's first time. We need to connect all these dots way faster. And I was almost 2 years into this, so I wasn't even that far along. And my kidney function was still pretty good at this point. But I was like, no, we need more than just meeting for the first time. We need an outreach program. We need all of this stuff. So, I definitely started telling all my friends about it. I was much more open. It completely opened my eyes. And it was in 8th grade when so this is where my story changes a lot. I got to 8th grade and National Kidney Foundation, which is, brings together, dozens of different foundations for kidney diseases. They go to Capitol Hill once a year to talk directly to members of Congress and try to get bills passed that will help the kidney community. They invited me to speak, to go on behalf of Alport syndrome. So immediately, me at 14 years old, I was like, this is huge. This is exactly what I've wanted to do. And I took that and I ran with it. They had me go to meetings for, California. And I met with, I was the only kid here. There were about 500, 600 people attending this. I was the only kid in the entire room. I tried dressing my best. I put on my first ever suit and tie. I felt super cool, really dapper, the whole thing. And I loved every moment. It was one of the best times of my life. And I met some of the most amazing people who I'm still in contact with today. And I was like, this is what I want to do. This is exactly what I want to be doing for my community and for the rest of my life. I want to be helping people. I want to be advocating. So I've done that every year since 8th grade. So I'm a senior now, and I've done it for the past 5 years. I just last week, actually, I just had it for my 6th time. I did Zoom this year, but that is, my life-changing moment. And 8th grade was
And just a quick question. So, don't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to find out. So, did your mom, did she end up getting tested?
almost 50 years later, which is crazy. And she'd had effects of kidney disease. She had, her kidneys decline, but this was the first time it was approved, or it was confirmed that she had kidney disease.
Now, Grant, in case people are listening and they don't know, so Alport can be very, very different on the spectrum, right? Like, I mean, obviously, if your mom
Yeah.
had this for 30 years and she hasn't needed a kidney transplant or anything like that,
No.
you can have just random effects. Everybody's
Yes. Now it's being, for the longest time, most women were just considered carriers for Alports, but that's being changed completely, because it really doesn't matter your gender or age or like that. Alports can affect you in really any way. I went from some kid who just got diagnosed in middle school, had no idea what was going on, to really, really empowered and much healthier in just a short time. It just took off so quickly. So, Alports can take you in many different directions, and I'm just happy that I was in the right place in the right time.
I think that in your story that you told, you kind of wrapped up how much the Alport Syndrome Foundation has impacted your life, and all of these steps to embracing your diagnosis and advocating for it, and all of those things, the emotional, the physical, and finding out in middle school and wanting to still play sports and all of that. I would turn back to Maddie just for a moment for that part of it. I know Grant answered a little bit more of that physical, emotional, side of thing that he was going through. At what point did you start to embrace this? Because you do have a really positive attitude. You're like, yeah, I got this, I got this, I got this. None. When did you really start to embrace it? And did you have a struggle with that, like emotional, the physical, the why is me kind of thing?
Yes, I did. So me growing up, I always knew that I had this kidney disease, like Grant did, like when he was young. I always knew I had a kidney disease, but I was the only one in my family that had Alport's or that had a kidney disease, period. So it wasn't it wasn't really dinner conversation in our household. And I think my parents researched as best they could, but to an extent, they they tried not to stress about it too much. But I didn't grow up really knowing much about Alports at all. They did tell me that, and I was aware that I had a kidney disease. Usually the term they used was glomerulonephritis, which is what I was originally diagnosed with, but that was actually like a misdiagnosis. So when I was 10, we kind of fit the pieces together. When I had the hearing test done, that's when it was like, okay, no, this is definitely Alport's. That's when kind of the glomerulonephritis term was kind of kicked out, because it's definitely Alport syndrome. And it was around that time, and probably throughout my teen years, that I kind of went through a rebellion period. Because I had the hearing aids and I really kind of needed the hearing aids, especially to hear in school. But I hated wearing them in middle school because they're not always super comfortable, and they like slide out because you think of all the wax you have in your ear, like they slide out and they're kind of loud. Sometimes it kind of, when you first put them in and when you first start wearing them, it kind of sounds like you're listening to someone talk through a microphone, and then like it comes out the amplifier, and it just sounds kind of like staticky and like radio-y. So I didn't like wearing them in middle school, and I went to a very small middle school. Like I had like 20 kids in my class, and I'd been with them since kindergarten. So it really wasn't as a necessity for me. But people would get frustrated with me when I couldn't hear. And then I'd get frustrated because it's like, if you're getting frustrated about this, how do you think I feel? Because I really can't hear you. And so, that was really difficult mentally to deal with. And then in high school, the nephrologist was so normalized. Going every 6 months to see a nephrologist, or every 9 months, was so normalized for me that it really became like a chore. Like it became something that you don't want to do. You regret, like you're like not looking forward to it every time you have to go. So when I was a teenager, that's really how it became. That's how I viewed the whole situation, as just a chore that I had to deal with. This was really, the whole kidney disease thing was really an inconvenience to me. And I definitely didn't embrace it the way I do now. But I also,
that turning point, was there like some turning point, or did you meet someone that you're
no,
like, you know what, I need to,
yes. So, right. So because this was really a chore to me, there was a point where I would forget to take my medication and I wasn't taking it consistently. And that, it really is an issue. And then I have my parents in my ear, like, you need to take your medication, and my nephrologist in my other ear, like, you need to take your medication. And I'm like 16 years old, and I'm like, I don't really know what the big deal is here. So actually, I remember this like moment so vividly. But I was on vacation one time, and I was just laying in bed, and I was like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to Google Alport syndrome and see what comes up. Like, there was really no rhyme or reason to it. I was like, I'm just going to Google it. And so I Googled it. And one of the first things that came up was the Alport Syndrome Foundation website. And there they had all of this information about all of like the medical stuff and the logistics behind it. And at this point I was 17, and I was already really into the sciencey stuff, and I already knew I wanted to be a nurse. So it was really the complex, like I'm reading all about the genetics of it. And it was really that medical information on the website that really piqued my interest. And it made me see how important this was, how important it was that I take my medication, and how important it is that I really embrace this, the situation that I'm in. It embrace the disease that I have. But and from there on out, I really took on a really strong advocate role for myself. And I went into my next nephrologist appointment and I was like, I'm just going to admit to you right now, I wasn't taking my medication consistently for the first few months after I saw you last, but I had this turning point and I get it now. And I get why you've been trying to tell me this, and I get why my parents have, and I'm sorry that I didn't listen, but I just needed to know, I just needed to learn myself. I needed to figure it out myself. And from there on out, and I said to her, I'm like, I want you to explain it to me, and I want you to explain everything, because I wasn't a kid anymore, and I didn't want to be talked to by my pediatric nephrologist like I was a kid, and I didn't want it dumbed down. I was like, I want you to explain this disease to me like you're explaining it to a colleague. And it was really through that medical aspect. And like I said, like I had already had a passion for science. I was in AP biology. We're doing Punnett squares, like we're doing genetic stuff. So it was really through that medical side of it that I definitely, that piqued my interest. And even like the patient stories that were on the Alport Syndrome Foundation website, they were so validating to me. Like, I'm not going through this alone. And like, I'm in Connecticut, I'm in a state, like, I don't know many Alport's patients here. So I had never met anybody with Alport syndrome before. And I'm reading these stories and I'm like, oh my God, people actually get it. Like, there are other people that are just as frustrated with hearing aids as I am. And there are other people that are going through this. And it was just so incredibly validating for me. And it really was empowering. Like, okay, I can do this. If other people are doing this, there are real people with real faces out there doing this, and I can do it too.
And Maddie, the way that you and Grant speak, I mean, you don't even need to say it in any other words about how much the foundation has really impacted you. Having that kind of like nucleus of a place where you can find support and resources in others and learn advocacy. You know what I'm saying? Go to Congress, do those things, hear, your voice. And I bet you, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when you told your doctor that when you were 17. Like, I want to know.
She was crying. My parents were crying. I was like, okay, Dad, I'm going to need you to pull it together because I'm not going to we don't need your tears right now. Like, I'm trying to learn. Okay. Yeah. It was a really powerful conversation though.
And is there anything within the Alport Syndrome Foundation that is your favorite aspect? I know they have lots of different things that, they encompass, but what is your favorite?
So one of my favorite things, oh my gosh, there's so many, but
just gonna pick one.
Okay.
Grant, you're gonna pick one.
Okay. My favorite thing is probably the community. The way, like, we have a support group on Facebook with over 2,800 members. They're US and international members. And we have representation for over 75 countries. So on that support page, it's really like a big family, and everybody shares their stories and everybody shares their concern. And we have people that work with the foundation, like Grant's mom, Lisa, and Kevin Schnur. And they're so great. So it's really that sense of community, and everybody's really just involved, in each other's lives. And, whenever there's someone going through dialysis or going through transplant, everybody kind of pitches in and, wishes them well. So it's really just that sense of community and that sense of everybody just cares for each other.
I love that. And Grant. Well, she probably took the answer.
That's really hard. I mean, really, it's, it is the community, but to be more specific, for me, it's the openness and the willingness of the community. Because it's not just that they're there, it's that they're so open and so willing to help with whatever it is. I mentioned that at my first, they tried to, especially before COVID times, really, we had about 2 family meetings a year, one more in the East Coast, one more in the West Coast, so as many people could attend as they needed. And it's just about meeting people who understand you. But it's not just that, it's as when you're first diagnosed and you don't understand it, you don't really want to be talking to a bunch of adults and doctors all that much. You want kids more your age who you can complain with and all of that. You can get really much more yourself with it. And at these family meetings, they separate the parents and they separate the kids so that we can all do our own learning, because the parents are like, I need to know diet and how to take care of my kids. And they're much more serious about it. The kids are like, can you, at 12, 13, you do want it dumbed down a little bit, because I hadn't taken a biology class or anything like that yet. I needed the basics, and it's all explained to you. They bring in specialists and it's all explained to you really well, but to be able to talk to kids your age about it, it's so much better. And once you're able to complain about something with other people who understand your complaints, it helps so much. And I met with Kevin Schnurr. I met with him my very first Alport Syndrome family meeting, and this was my first advocacy moment. He had known for years that he needed hearing aids, never wore them, not once, didn't even try them. He thought he was fine. I was 12. I wasn't very confident because I wasn't sure who I was, but I pulled him aside and I pretty much called him an idiot for not wearing his hearing aids. And I had just met this guy and I looked at him, I was like, look, I'm just started wearing my hearing aids. I know very little about them. It's only been like a year, but you need to wear yours because I didn't even know that the car blinker made a noise when it was on. So it's a huge life changer. I think that worked. He started wearing them after that, but it just takes that openness and the willingness of everyone else around you to get you to start doing it with yourself. And that's what was huge. These are people I'd never met before, but immediately you just had a bond with them. It's just something so specific that you just trust these people. And
special.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you don't find that many places. So to just walk into a room and already feel like everyone there is there to help you and you just know it changes everything. So that's my favorite part for sure. How open and willing everyone is to help whoever it is that needs or wants help.
And I think we'd say like that transparency, that when you guys are together and you all have this, you're open enough to be like, I don't want to wear my hearing aids. These keep slipping out of my ear. Why do I have to go to all these appointments? At least when you guys were together, you guys could openly speak and the other person can understand.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
love what we go through every time.
Yes. And so Grant, you're going to have mute yourself. And Maddie, I have one more question for you, and then it's going to come back to Grant. So I know I'm giving him a little bit of time to hear what it is. But in closing today, obviously it's Alport Syndrome Awareness Month. It is also Kidney Awareness Month. So because there is tons of different kidney conditions as well. I would like you to leave the audience, and whether you want to speak to all your young adults and all the teenagers out there, or even the adults, what would you like to leave them with as a thought that you'd like them to walk away with this from after today?
As far as
remember,
right. As far as the teens and the young adults go, I would just say to anybody with any chronic medical condition, whether it be Alport's or another kidney disease or any condition, just own it. Like as a teen and as a young adult, it's so hard. And especially with, being in high school or in middle school or in college with, everybody that's around you. And if you have hearing aids or if you have, something else, like it sucks. It does. It sucks. And we all get that, but it's like we're kind of here and you have it. So it's like at some point, let's just come together and get over ourselves, and let's just own it at this point, because you can fight it all you want, but I can attest personally it does not work. I'm sure Grant can at some point too. He's probably tried to fight it. Just own it and find out as much as you can, and transfer all of that energy and all of that frustration and all of that angst and turn it into being an advocate for yourself, because that's exactly what I did. I took all of that frustration and all of that, why me, why am I dealing with this? And I turned it into going to every doctor's appointment. I had questions on my phone and I would ask, what can I do? What do I need to do? Like become the patient that annoys the hell out of your doctor, because that is the best thing that you could do for your health, for your confidence, for everything. Just find out everything you can about it and embrace it. And as far as adults go, whether you have a chronic medical condition or whether you have kids with a chronic medical condition, I definitely would tell any adult, any person, kid or adult, to be a patient advocate. It is the absolute best thing that you can do to turn all of that energy into something that can really benefit you. I would say too, talk to somebody else with your condition. Try to find someone else, whether it's international, whether it's, if you have Alports, join the Alport Syndrome Foundation, join the support group, which is it's an Alport Syndrome Foundation of USA. That's the main Facebook page. We also have an Instagram at Alport Syndrome FNDN, which stands for foundation, and then Twitter at Alport Syn SYND FNDN. We also have LinkedIn, YouTube, and an app just for patients, which is called ASF Community. You can get it in the App Store. But get involved, try to find somebody else that you can relate to, because that was the biggest blessing for me. Just find someone that you can relate to, that can validate it for you, that you can complain to, like Grant was saying, because it helps. Just embrace your stuff. Parents, support your kids, even if they're rebellious, bratty teenagers. They're frustrated. I know it's the worst, but support your kids. Try to understand, talk to other parents. That's all I could really say. Just everybody embrace it.
Maddie summed a lot of it up right there. But Grant, I know you got something inspiring you're going to throw at me in closing. That's something for me.
I mean, really, I couldn't have really said it better myself. I mean, that is everything that I'd ever want to say. And, our go-to thing that we tell people is you're not alone. That is in the rare disease community, especially, the whole thing is you're not alone. We've been trying to change that for so long, especially with, I go to meetings with doctors and just say, hey, you can't be telling your patients that it's so rare you might not meet someone. Like Maddie just explained, with all of the different social media stuff that we have, it's there. You just look for it a little bit. It is there. And same with a lot of rare disease communities. That's why, I saw, as a teenager, I've grown up with the internet, and I haven't, you don't really understand how amazing it is until you find a group of, less than 100 people with a rare disease who fully understand you. And like, oh, all I had to do was search, hearing loss and kidney disease, and I immediately got in touch with the founder of Alport Syndrome. I'm like, of the foundation. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, it just took a simple little search and I found it immediately. But yeah, the whole point is you're not alone, whether it's not in person, but online, you just call, text someone. It's so helpful.
Yes.
Now, I didn't exactly have as much of a rebellious stage. I wasn't Maddie, but I tried embracing it as much as I could. It didn't go extremely smoothly. There are obviously bumps in the road for everyone. And, like Maddie was saying, the support helps, though my brother and my dad didn't exactly understand what I was going through as much. They're very healthy, and I'm really happy for them. I'm so glad that they aren't going through what I'm going through, but just for them to be there. They didn't go to all my doctor's meetings. That was mostly just my mom and I. But every time after my brother wanted to do something with me, my dad loves to cook. So he was like, all right, let's, I know you're really bummed out because you were just at your nephrologist for an hour and a half getting labs done, the whole thing, not hearing great news. Let's cook some food. Let's have some quality time. It's, every bit of support helps. And it doesn't have to be someone who completely understands you with your disease. It can be family, friends, whoever it is that you feel close with and you can have some, a good time with. That helps. Because, like I said, you're not alone. Disease, not disease. Just be open to other people's support and help. The more you close yourself off, the worse it gets. Since being diagnosed, I firmly believe your mental attitude really helps with your physical health. The more stressed I was in middle school, high school, I always felt worse. I don't know if Maddie can attest to this, but I've always been someone who gets sick really easily. And we find that a lot with the Alports community. We just don't have the greatest immune systems. So I've been advocating for schoolwork with my teachers since a young age. So I just understood the whole advocating for myself thing. But once I found out I had disease, I was like, doesn't feel as important now because they're not going to understand me. So why should I try to explain it to them? And then like I said, once I met with people who understood me and I realized I wasn't alone, I embraced it more. My mental health got better. My physical health started following along because I started doing things that were better for me, that I liked doing, and the embracing, it just changed everything.
I love it, you guys. I'm telling you, they need their own show, don't they? You guys could go every week. I bet you guys would have something to talk about. I just love it. So what Grant said, I can't say enough myself, is that you are not alone, whether it is in the Alport community, whether it is in the On-Air Advocate community. We are here for you. They are here for you. And I thank you both for spending this morning with me here, sharing your stories and all of your wisdom. Because for both of you being adults, you have a lot of wisdom. And so I so appreciate that. I so appreciate all of you guys watching as we continue our Kidney Awareness Month, our Alport Syndrome Awareness Month over here at the On-Air Advocate. If you guys want to know any more about the On-Air Advocate, you can head on over to onairadvocate.com and you can find all of our resources right there. So with that, I thank you, Maddie. I thank you, Grant. Thank you guys so much for being here today. Bye-bye, guys. Oh, I was like, you can take yourselves on mute. You can say bye. It's all right. We can yell.
Thank you so much for having us.
For having us. This is great.
All right. Goodbye, guys. Thank you.